You know, I had this friend, a Libra, and they have this uncanny ability, like they can walk into a room and it could be full of people ready to like totally lose it. And somehow
Oh, yeah.
they just know what to say to get everybody laughing and
Yeah.
chilling out.
Yeah.
Like they've got this internal level
Yeah.
and they just use it to like bring peace to the world.
Right.
It's wild. Speaking of Libras and their pursuit of balance,
Mm-hmm.
you gave us this article called Libra Zodiac Sign, Horoscope, Dates, and Personality Traits. And I'm really curious to unpack this whole idea of balance, see what makes these peacemakers tick, you know?
Yeah. Well, I think even if you're not like a diehard astrology fan or anything,
Right.
you have to admit these like zodiac archetypes can be strangely accurate, you know?
Right.
It's like they tap into something kind of universal about human nature. And yeah, Libras definitely seem to embody that whole balance thing in a very specific way.
Totally. So for anyone who needs a quick refresher, Libras are born between late September and late October, which puts them right in the middle of the zodiac.
Right in the middle.
And they're considered an air sign.
Yes.
What does that mean exactly, to be an air sign? And how does that tie into this whole balance thing?
That's a great question. So in astrology, each sign belongs to one of four elements: earth, air, fire, and water. And these elements represent different modes of expression.
Okay.
Air signs, like Libras, they're all about the mind. They're thinkers, very communicative, always weighing different perspectives, always looking for that intellectual sweet spot, you know?
Oh, interesting.
It's no coincidence that, like, the symbol for Libra is the scales.
Right.
Which is the only inanimate object in the zodiac.
Oh, wow.
It literally embodies balance itself.
Wow, I never made that connection before.
Yeah.
And to top it off, they're ruled by Venus.
Yes.
Which, like, we usually associate that with love and beauty.
Right. But Venus also governs pleasure, harmony, and appreciating the finer things in life.
Okay.
So, you know, it's not just about romantic love with Libras. You know, it's about finding beauty and balance in all areas of their lives, whether it's through art, music, relationships, or even just creating a really harmonious atmosphere at home.
That makes so much sense. My Libra friend is always the one hosting those dinner parties where, like,
Yes.
everybody feels comfortable and engaged in these interesting conversations.
Exactly. They're natural mediators, diplomats, always striving to create that sense of equilibrium
Right.
in their surroundings.
Yeah, it's true.
But here's the thing. This constant pursuit of balance can also be a double-edged sword.
Oh, okay.
You know, the article mentions that while Libras are known for being, you know, cooperative and diplomatic, they can also hold a grudge.
Really? It seems counterintuitive, right?
Yeah.
Like, if you're all about harmony, shouldn't you just, like, forgive and forget?
Right, right.
What's the expert take on that?
Well, I think it goes back to this idea that Libras are very deeply affected by any kind of imbalance or injustice. So while they may not, like, express their anger openly in the moment, holding onto a grudge is almost, it's almost like their way of acknowledging that something wasn't right.
Right.
And preserving a record of it. It's almost like they're holding the other person accountable, even if it's just internal.
That's such a fascinating perspective.
Yeah.
It's like they're internally weighing the scales, just making sure that
Yes.
eventually, like, things balance out, even if it takes a while.
Exactly. And this internal struggle for equilibrium, it plays out in all aspects of a Libra's life, from their love lives to their careers.
Okay, well, let's dive into that then. The article spends a good amount of time on love and relationships, calling it a main priority for Libras.
Yeah.
Is that really true, or is it more nuanced than that?
It's definitely a major priority, but it's more about the quality of the partnership, you know,
Right.
than just being in a relationship just for the sake of it.
Right, right.
Remember we talked about Libras being an air sign?
Yeah.
So that means they also like value their independence and intellectual freedom.
Right.
So for them, finding a partner who complements their need for harmony, but also like stimulates their mind,
Yeah.
that's essential, you know?
So it's not just about finding someone to, like, share a Netflix subscription with.
Right.
It's about finding someone who really gets them on, like, a deeper level.
Exactly. The article mentions this idea of Libras needing a mirror in a relationship.
A mirror. Okay.
Someone who reflects back their best qualities and helps them understand themselves better.
Okay.
But it's not about finding like an exact replica of themselves.
Right.
In fact, the article mentions this interesting detail about Scorpio Rising,
Scorpio Rising.
which basically means that the sign Scorpio was rising on the eastern horizon at the time of a Libra's birth.
Okay. You've officially lost me. Scorpio Rising. What does that even mean? And how does it relate to a Libra?
It's a little astro-speak, I
Sure.
know.
Okay.
But essentially, in astrology, the rising sign, it represents like how we approach our relationships and how we express our desires.
Okay.
And Scorpio is a sign that's associated with intensity, passion, transformation.
Intense.
Yeah, so having Scorpio rising, it adds this really interesting layer to a Libra's typical, balanced nature.
Right.
It suggests a hidden depth and a real longing for those deep, soulful connections that go way beyond just surface-level compatibility.
Wow. So maybe those late-night philosophical debates that my Libra friend loves so much,
Yes.
they're more than just intellectual exercises.
Exactly.
There's like a real deeper reason why they're so drawn to that.
Yes, there's a reason why they're so drawn to uncovering those hidden truths and exploring those depths of human emotion.
Right.
They crave that intensity and connection, even if it's not always, obvious on the surface.
Wow. Fascinating.
And speaking of connections,
Yeah.
this need for balance also extends to their relationships with friends and family.
Of course. Yeah.
But it can manifest in some, interesting ways.
Okay. How so?
For example, the article mentions that Libras can sometimes have, really high expectations for their friendships.
Oh, tell me about it. My Libra friend can be such a perfectionist when it comes to
Yes.
their relationships.
Yeah.
They want everyone to get along and everything to be harmonious,
Right.
which, let's be real, can be a bit unrealistic at times.
It can be. It can be. And it goes back to their deep-seated need for things to feel balanced and harmonious.
Right.
So when conflict arises or a friend doesn't quite meet those idealistic expectations,
Right.
it can really throw them off kilter.
Yeah, I've noticed that for
Yeah.
sure. It's like they'd rather just avoid confrontation altogether
Right.
than risk disrupting the peace, even if it means bottling up their own feelings in the process,
Which isn't always healthy.
Definitely not.
And this tendency to prioritize harmony over everything else can also show up in their family dynamics.
Oh, interesting.
The article talks about how Libras might avoid expressing their own needs or opinions if it means, rocking the boat within their family.
It's like they're always trying to keep everyone else happy, even at the expense of their own well-being.
Right. And while this desire for peacemaking, it definitely comes from a good place.
Yeah.
It's important for Libras to find that balance,
Right.
between maintaining harmony and also honoring their own needs
Right.
and their individuality.
Right.
So finding their voice, setting healthy boundaries, that's a really important part of their journey.
Absolutely, yeah. It seems like this theme of finding that sweet spot, that equilibrium,
Yes,
it's crucial for Libras in all aspects of their lives.
it is.
Speaking of which, let's talk career and finances.
Okay.
Are Libras all about that work-life balance, or are they secretly closet workaholics?
Haha.
What does the article say about how they approach their careers?
It's funny you should ask that because the article actually highlights their need for balance, in all areas of life,
Right.
including their careers.
So no Libra CEOs pulling all-nighters fueled by takeout and ambition.
Not necessarily. It's more that, their ambition tends to be really tied to their values,
Okay.
They're not just climbing the ladder for the sake of it.
Right.
They want their work to feel meaningful and aligned with that, desire for fairness and beauty.
Okay, that makes sense. But how does that play out in terms of actual career choices?
Well, the article mentions those, traditional Libra careers, like lawyers and judges.
All right, right,
Which totally tracks, right, with their love of justice and diplomacy.
right.
But it also highlights artistic fields like design, music,
Oh, interesting.
which speaks to that Venusian side.
I've always thought of Libras as being super practical.
Right.
But when you put it that way, it's that creative outlet is just as important to them as, say, bringing home a steady paycheck.
Absolutely. It's about finding that sweet spot, between practicality and that need for self-expression.
Yeah.
And this balancing act, it extends to their finances, too.
Oh, really?
Remember that detail about Libra's overthinking purchases?
Oh, 100%. My Libra friend could write a dissertation on the pros and cons of buying a new pair of shoes.
Right. And it's not just about being indecisive,
Yeah.
It's about their desire to make choices that feel balanced
Right.
and aligned with their values. They're weighing the aesthetic pleasure of a beautiful object against their budget,
Right, right.
the practicality of the purchase, even the ethical implications.
Wow. So even their shopping sprees are an exercise in finding equilibrium. It's they see balance everywhere.
They do. And while it might seem like a lot of effort to some, you know?
Right.
It's just how they navigate the world.
Right.
And this attention to detail, this desire to make thoughtful choices, I think that's actually one of their greatest strengths.
It's true. They always seem to have it all together.
Right.
Even when they're internally, like, debating the merits of cashmere versus merino wool.
Exactly.
Speaking of seeing both sides, the article touches on the subtle differences between Libra men and women.
Yeah.
What stood out to you?
Well, I found the observation about Libra men needing visual inspiration pretty fascinating.
Oh, interesting.
It's like they need to see something concrete, something tangible, you know,
Yeah.
to help them like process information and make decisions.
Oh, wow.
It's not about being superficial or anything. It's about
Wow.
their like connection to beauty and aesthetics and how that influences their, you know, whole thought process.
So, like, showing a Libra man a spreadsheet of financial projections
Right.
wouldn't be as effective as, say, taking them to see, like, a beautifully designed building that, like, represents those same projections, but in a more visual way.
Exactly. It's
Okay.
about appealing to their senses and that appreciation for, you know, harmony and design.
Wow, that's fascinating.
And for Libra women, the article highlights their love of deep conversations
Yeah.
and intellectual stimulation. Like they need to engage in those like back and forth exchanges, you know,
Yeah.
to feel really seen and understood.
Which, again, makes total sense with, like, the whole air sign emphasis on communication and mental agility.
Exactly. It's all connected.
It really is, yeah. Wow, this has been such an insightful deep dive. We've covered so much ground, from their love of balance to, like, their hidden depths.
Yeah.
But before we wrap up, I have one final thought.
Okay.
If Libras are so focused on balance, what happens when they need to tip the scales in your own in favor? How do they, like, reconcile their own needs with that desire for harmony, you know?
That's such a great question to leave our listeners with.
Right.
Because it gets at the heart of what it means to be a Libra, you know?
Right.
It's like the ultimate balancing act, isn't it? Learning to advocate for themselves, but also like honoring their relationships and that need for peace.
It really is. It's something we can all learn from, I think, Libra or not.
Right.
You know, finding that equilibrium between our own needs and the needs of others. It's like a lifelong journey, right?
Beautifully said.
Well, on that note, I think we've reached, like, a perfectly balanced conclusion.
Uh-huh.
Thanks for joining me on this fascinating exploration of all things Libra.
It was my pleasure. Until next time.